really good. Sometimes I wish I wasn't. It first started, there's the Ellen Willis test. These are ways to look at genders to see if there's a reason why somebody is represented as male or female. She was a feminist. She was a writer, a thinker in the 70s, and she just said, it doesn't really matter. If you flip the genders, does the story still make sense? If it does, it doesn't matter whether you have a male character or a female character or an androgynous character. Then there was the Bechdel test, which you've probably heard of, that actually came from comics. And in the Bechdel test, it's you have to have two women that have to talk to each other and talk to each other about something other than a man. The problem with this is Twilight passes the test, but Pacific Rim doesn't.
Right, yeah.
And Pacific Rim is one of the greatest movies ever made. Which we'll go to here, the Makomori test. This was created by a Tumblr user. And in it, they said, just have one female character, make sure she gets her own narrative arc, and the arc is not about supporting a man's story. Because if anybody in here seen Twilight, I did, I have a 14-year-old girl. That's why, trust me. They do talk about other things, but it's mostly, you know, I'm going to sit here and lie because this vampire that sparkles doesn't love me. That was a spoiler, sorry. Okay. Then in the 2010s, Kelly Sue DeConnick came up with the sexy lamp test. And she said if you could replace a female character with a sexy lamp, then maybe you need to change the story a little bit. So there really isn't one test. Basically, when you're talking about gender, make sure that your characters have agency, that they impact the plot, and it's not how many, it's how much. I would much rather watch a Pacific Rim story with, you know, a woman who has her own story than a bunch of women sitting around talking about men. No offense, men. Okay. So, what makes a good female character? It's the same as any character. Agency, motivation, strengths, weaknesses, free will, and not just a love interest. And I'm kind of going through this quickly because I want us to get to talking to these people because they're awesome. But before we get into this, let's talk a little bit about what is feminine and what is masculine. In the gender course, we took a test that is that measures how feminine, masculine, or androgynous characters are, or people are. We took it for our characters. We took it for Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. Does anybody want to say where they think masculine, feminine, androgynous Batman was? He was very masculine. What about Superman?
Very masculine.
No. He came off as nearly feminine. And Clark Kent came off as feminine. Because these are the traits that we associate with masculine and feminine, if you think about it. So we need to think about what is feminine. You know, is Wonder Woman feminine? She's tough. You know, she came off as nearly masculine. So we have all of these different things you can do. You know, here's an example about trying to make, you know, which Sue Storm is more feminine. This one, where she has a costume on, or that one, where she looks like Meg Ryan dressed as a stripper, which does not go together. So, you know, you have Lois Lane, you know, it's all of these things. Who is more feminine? Then you have Amanda Waller, when she's the real Amanda Waller, where she's the wall, or the new Amanda Waller, where she's skinny and sexy. You know, which one is more feminine? I prefer the wall instead of the twig. All right, let's talk about masculine. Which here is more masculine? Isn't that just wrong?
That is so wrong.
To me, the Superman, Christopher Reeve, is the most masculine, to me. That's my preference. But you have all sorts of things. You have Superman spanking Lois Lane because she deserved it, because she was bad. What was great was when people wrote in and said, it's about time. Why hadn't he done this before? The editor wrote, which we'll talk more about the editor at 6 o'clock tonight in this room, Mort Weisinger. he said, well, she deserved to be spanked, but Superman can't do it. This is actually one of his robots, because Superman would hurt her because he's too strong. Not, she's a grown woman and shouldn't be spanked. But, you know. So, you know, you have the Captain America here in the middle, which is just, ugh. You know, you've got Superman, Shazam very muscular, Batman very muscular, Wolverine very muscular. Is that what masculine's all about? And then you have the whole idea of villains. Can anybody tell me what they think the difference between the masculine, these male villains down here, and the female villains is? The women have very little clothing. They're all very sexy. And for the males, we have the Penguin. You know, we have Dr. Doom. You know, we have the Joker. They're not exactly somebody I go, ooh, I need to go with him. So we have this little disparity there. Again, you've got male athletes. That's what they look like. Not exactly like the superheroes, but they're kind of close. And then you've got female athletes, and what I like to call the butts of prey. So, you know, not all people look the same. We all look different. So, I'm going to ask some questions to the panel up here. I'll try and leave time for questions. But I want you guys, and I'll start down here. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. I think. About, and this is Amy. She writes for StarWars.com. Way cool. She writes for CBR. She's a journalist. She has her own blog. She does things, great articles on Blast Off.